A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Rejuvenate 2021, Edition 1. We are so happy to have everyone here again today, and I'm so happy to be welcoming a dear Clubhouse friend, Lottie Dowling, all the way from Melbourne. Thank you for spending time with us. Lottie, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. It's a sunny, beautiful morning in Melbourne over here, although it looks like I'm in India.
Yes, you have got the Taj Mahal right behind you. Beautiful. Well, just before we go on, let me do a quick introduction of Lottie, and I hope I do justice to her. She is the manager of Going Global at Mag Languages, and of course, she's also one of the co-founders of Educate, which is spelled EDUC with a numerical 8, on Clubhouse, which is one of the largest education clubs in Clubhouse itself. And we will hear more about what she does at Mag, as well as what she do at Educate on Clubhouse. And then today we are very fortunate to be having her to be talking about global citizenship in education. I'm not going to go into the details. I think I'll leave it to the expert to share a little bit more. And Lottie, perhaps I'll leave the floor, the stage to you.
Thank you, Andrew, for the very warm welcome. Well, kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, 大家好，欢迎你们都来参加今天的节目。I only speak 3 languages, too well, one a little bit. But my name is Lottie Dowling. I am a New Zealand. Terrible Chinese, but I try. I am a New Zealand educator. I was born in New Zealand, grew up in New Zealand, and I now live in Melbourne. But I've lived and worked all over the world in different schools. I've worked in the public sector, the private sector, the international sector. I've worked for departments of education. I spent 10 years, amazing years in Beijing, China. I also worked and lived in London, in inner city, gritty schools. And I'm now here in Melbourne, 4 seasons in one day. And I am the manager of Going Global. And I am absolutely passionate about global citizenship. And global citizenship is a key skill for our young people in our sort of increasingly globalized world. I am sharing some resources today. So if you'd like to look at those resources, please go to either my Twitter handle or Meg's Twitter handle. You can see them on the slide, Lottie Dowling NZ or Meg Global Ed. Please, if you have any questions, my inbox is also open on Twitter. So I'm always happy to answer questions and provide further resources. Okay. I'm also one of the co-founders of Educate, as Andrew said, one of the largest education clubs on Clubhouse, and we do weekly talks. We co-support and co-produce conferences, which are across a range of subjects. There's a STEM and a STEAM one coming up, there's an arts coming up, and there's Lingua Cultura actually happening this weekend, languages and culture. So what do I do at Meg? Well, I work in an amazing team of people where we build global citizens through global citizenship programs, primarily through language and culture programs. So our teachers are in country, they're in China, they're in Colombia, they teach Chinese and Spanish to students across Australia, New Zealand, the US and the UK. And we believe it's really important for our students who are living in this increasingly globalized world to build meaningful relationships with people from other countries and other cultures. And of course, we can leverage digital technologies to do that because we all know how to use Zoom, particularly after COVID-19. I think everybody's Zoom proficient. We graduated from the School of Zoom. We also run global citizenship programs where I work with schools on a whole school approach around developing global citizenship through a model where we look at lots of areas where we can develop global citizens beyond languages, beyond language and culture programs. And we do lots more at Meg as well, but I'm not here today to talk about Meg. I'm also the co-founder at Educate. As I said, we do a lot of different things at Educate. So please, if you are on Clubhouse, jump in, check us out. And we have an amazing community of educators in there. Would love to connect you to. So let's get started. Let's have a bit of a chat about what is global citizenship. So global citizenship means lots of different things to lots of different people. So today's talk is talking about global citizens, activists unite. And we're going to talk a little bit about what activism is, what we're talking about with activists unite. But I think when we look at these pictures, I think we can all sort of take a deep breath and reflect on a world that is under increasing pressure, a world that is under increasing strain. Our natural environment is under a lot of pressure. And so we are seeing a lot of issues at the moment, and increasingly so, around things such as climate change. And I'm sure you can think of, if I said to you, what are some of the biggest problems and issues that we are seeing in the world right now? I'm sure you could rattle off, unfortunately, 5 or 6 just off your hand just at this moment. So climate change is obviously one of them. We also obviously are living through a time of a global pandemic, but we have increasingly flattened the world. We are all able to travel easily on planes pre-COVID, and so we can easily be passing things around. So we also could be living through global pandemics, which of course we're all living through right now. We're living in a time we have never been more interconnected or interdependent, given the relationship of COVID-19 in the world right now, and also the collaborative nature that we have depended on for our brightest minds on the planet to solve vaccine problems, to solve security issues, to solve all of these problems that one country and culture cannot solve. We have to learn to live and work together to solve these challenges faced by us all. Now, we're also seeing some amazing progress in humanity. We're seeing more people pulled out of poverty. We're seeing the growing middle class rising in China and India, across Asia, parts of South America, of course, Africa. And so this is a wonderful development, but it's also putting more pressure on human resources around food and producing food, with our human population increasing. So, how are we using science to look at food security issues? Gender equality is obviously a very important issue. Millions and millions and millions of dollars are lost in commerce every single year because of the barriers faced by women returning to work after they've had children, entering the workforce, not sort of going up the ladder in leadership positions, or unfortunately in some countries and cultures, not even being able to attend school regularly or having to drop out more, earlier. And we're seeing this in lots of places in the world, is that unfortunately for young girls and young women, the barriers to education are increasingly kind of high. So lots of problems, lots of issues that unfortunately our young people are facing. Regional conflicts, these are still happening. And, luckily we're not in the days of the big world wars, but, we are still seeing in the news every single day. If we turn on the news right now, I'm sure everybody could mention a few different regional conflicts that are going on. And of course, what happens with regional conflicts is we have, a huge amount of refugees that, cause, you need a lot of support from places. So there are all kinds of issues our planet, our people, our young people are inheriting. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us as educators, as parents, as members of the community, when we look to our young people? When we talk about being a global citizen, what does it mean to be a global citizen? I'd be really interested if you're on the chat to put into the chat what you think a global citizen is, because lots of people have lots of different ideas about global citizenship, and we'll have a little look in a moment at a few different definitions and models. One of the biggest pieces of I'd say progress in this area in the last few years is that PISA, who traditionally are responsible for the testing, the international testing. PISA is run by the OECD. They do the international testing every 4 years, and it is reading, maths, and science. These are the 3 subjects that they test all the different countries on that take part. And in 2015, we saw the PISA Global Competence in the latest PISA testing, and they, 2018, and they put the results out just last year. So they were announced the results of the first year that global competence was included as a subject alongside reading, maths, and science. And this is really encouraging, because what they're saying is global competence is just as important as reading is, as maths is, as science is. So what is global competence? What is global citizenship? Well, PISA have defined it in a model, which we'll have a look at in a moment. But I'm going to give you a moment just to read this quote by Andreas Schleicher, who's the Director of Education and Skills at the OECD. And I'd be really interested in your thoughts around what you think this looks like as an educator in schools, preparing a student for a world in which people need to work with others of diverse cultural origins, appreciate different ideas and perspectives and values, where people need to develop trust and collaborate across differences, and where our lives, all of our lives, are affected by issues that transcend national boundaries, just like all those issues we just talked about. So this is the model. What we see outside of the model: knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills. And we know that the 4th industrial model, that our education system is outdated. Traditionally, school was about acquiring knowledge from the gatekeeper, from the educator. That's gone now. What we're seeing now is that gatekeeper, the educator, doesn't have all the knowledge, because the knowledge is in the smartphone, the knowledge is on the internet. We can find that knowledge anywhere. So what we're looking at is we've got to support our students to develop more than that, more than having that information in their brains. Values, attitudes, skills. And global competence has been broken down into these 4 key areas. First one: understand and appreciate the perspectives and the worldviews of others. The first one is examine, local, global, and intercultural issues. That's the red one. That one is the learning about piece. The next one: understand and appreciate the perspectives of the world views of others. This piece is the values, attitudes, empathy, respect, understanding. The next one is engaging in open, appropriate, and effective interactions across cultures. Intercultural communication. Not just talking to each other, talking with each other, learning with each other, learning from each other. And then the last one: take action for collective well-being and sustainable development. So that last piece, take action, is the piece we're going to kind of talk to today. So global citizenship, that is global competence, and it's very similar to global citizenship. Citizenship is often talks about a sense of belonging, belonging to a world, being a person on this planet. I belong to this, and this is more than the country or the culture that I belong to. So, beyond being a New Zealander, as a global citizen, I am part of something greater than that. Global competence is another way to look at that. So when we look at global citizenship, today I'm going to be talking to the Asia Society's model. And the Asia Society's model is very similar to the PISA model. We have the investigate the world, the learning about. We have the recognizing perspectives, where we've got the empathy, understanding, respect being developed, and other perspectives, of course, learning about, learning with, communicating ideas again, that intercultural communication, and then the taking action piece that we're really going to be talking to today. Taking action is the fourth piece there. Now, there are other models of global citizenship. So I don't want you to think this is the only one. There's lots out there, and you can look at some of those other models. One that you might have heard of is UNESCO global citizenship. And there's another one that is Oxfam global citizenship. So there are a couple of models that are quite well known, that are often referred to, but there are other models and definitions that you can check out. So what is global citizenship to us at MEC? We say it's based on the understanding that we all belong to a larger group than our own country or culture. So it is beyond our country and culture. It is developing the knowledge, skills, and values needed to be an active participant in a globalized world, and a belief we can all make a positive impact on the world we live in. And this is where we talk about Activists Unite, because I'm sure you know some of these faces. Have a look at some of these faces, and you might not know some of these faces. So who are our global change makers? All of these people are young people. They are not adults. They are either still in school. Some of them have been in primary school when they started their change making. They started their activism. So let's have a look at who some of these people are. I'm sure everybody knows Malala Yousafzai, who started the Malala Fund. You know, an incredible young woman that we all are very familiar with her work. Of course, we're all probably quite familiar with Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg started the Fridays for Future movement around climate change, and started obviously her work with the protesting outside her local government area. But what she's done is she started an international movement across the world using the hashtag Fridays for Future. Another person is Marley Diaz. She started the 1000 Black Girl Books. It's a Twitter campaign. And that was started because she was at school and she said, hey, I don't see myself in this literature. I don't see my face. I don't see my culture represented here. So she started a movement around identifying and donating books to schools that had young Black children, Black females, Black males as characters in them. Another amazing person is Param Jaggi, who at the age of 13 invented something called Algae Mobile. It converts carbon dioxide emissions from cars into oxygen. How incredible is that? So he was still in school when he did his invention. Zuriel Oduwale, you can see her just here on the left. She is a girls advocate, a self-taught filmmaker, and she's interviewed, I think, around 30 heads of states. And she does a lot of work around girls' education, very similar to some of the themes that Malala also covers. Nicholas is a really interesting person. He is up here on the right. He started a movement called Gotta Have Soul. So Gotta Have Soul started when he was going to school one day. He came across a brother and a sister who were homeless, and he realized through some interactions that only one of them would go to school each day because they only had one pair of shoes. So they would share that pair of shoes. So Nicholas started a movement to donate shoes to homeless children, and you can check out his hashtag Gotta Have Soul. Emma Gonzalez, who's over here on the right, you may be familiar with her. She worked together with a other group of students who, unfortunately, Emma was part of the school shooting that happened. She started in the USA, Never Again MSD, and so they do a lot of work around anti-gun legislation and taking action through that movement. She was in high school when she and her other students started this campaign. And they've done a number of quite prominent speeches around this subject. Calvin Doe, over here on the left, is an incredible young man. As a child, he started inventing batteries using a tin cup and, things he could find around the house. These self-made batteries he used to power the homes of his local community. And then using junk that he found around his community, he also invented a community radio. So this is a child with incredible mind and talent who used what was there in Sierra Leone and is quite a famous young inventor. Now, all of these people were not adults when they started their global change-making movement. And I'm going to get you to have a little look at this next slide. This next slide is a map of all the current movements that a young person can join in the Fridays for Future. So if you're in Australia or India or Denmark or the UK or Brazil, you can find the movements, going to this map, clicking on them and joining these movements with other young change makers around the world. And as we can see, this movement is well beyond Greta Thunberg. This movement has thousands of young people organizing, mobilizing, supporting each other to take action in an area that they feel passionate about the environment, about climate. And this is also an area that the next two young change makers are very famous for. Now, I've included these two change makers because we actually, when we do our language and culture programs, we also learn about culture and all different aspects of culture. And we learn about famous, celebrities and different types of sports. And we also talk about social issues. So part of the program is learning about these two change makers. And Francesco Vera Mendes is an amazing young child who spoke to the Colombian Senate when he was 10 years old. And he's used social media. Yes, he's used social media and press to get his message out. Have a look at his T-shirt. It says, "There is no planet B." So we can see that he's an environmental activist who has been on this since he's a very, very young child. The other person that you may or may not have heard of is Francia Marquez. She actually won the Environmental Nobel Prize as well as some other local national prizes. She's a social, cultural and environmental leader. She does a lot of work around the defense of ancestral homes of the Afro-Colombian people, around anti-mining, etc. So we've got these incredible change makers. Now, somewhat recently, I was also lucky enough to speak with Sophia Liel. Sophia Liel is a young woman who invented the nail glue that you can see here. Now, she was at school when she invented the nail glue, and it was a school project. So she went to a school that had a principal that was very, very committed to project-based learning, and the school had a very strong focus on entrepreneurship. She, as part of her class, alongside all of her other students in the class, designed a project on something that they wanted to invent, something that was meaningful to them. And she'd been doing a lot of reading around the displacement of people in her country due to natural disasters, because the weather in this area was particularly bad. And she'd seen photos of people living in tents for months on end. And she said, surely there must be a better way. So as a school project at the age of, I think she was 14 when she first started, she started to design nail glue, which is essentially a small caravan that is really well designed. It can sleep 3 people, things fold out, things fold in. And there's actually an interview on the Meg website I did with her where she talks about her process, and she has presented this to the United Nations. And she is hoping for this project to be fully funded and be used out in the world.
Amazing.
Now, amazing. So Sophia, Francesco, Francia, all of these people, all of these young change makers, they are obviously passionate individuals with incredible minds who have connected to a purpose. They've found their purpose. They've found something that they want to work on. And I love this diagram from Project Wayfinder. So love what you do, your strengths and skills, and a need in the world. And that is your purpose. So I guess the question for us as educators is we have these incredible young people like Sophia. And what is remarkable about Sophia is when I found out about Sophia because I was talking to her principal. And her principal said, she was talking about the school mentality around entrepreneurship and how it starts at, in the early years, they have entrepreneurial programs that go all the way through, how project-based learning is implemented all the way through school. And she started to talk about all of these different students. It wasn't just Sophia. It wasn't that Sophia was, abnormal in the school. It wasn't that she was like the one example. She was one of many. I heard of many, many students that had invented different things. A student of her, a classmate of hers, I think in the same year, had invented, and it was being used in the school, a system for the rainwater to be recycled and used through the toilets. In the school, completely recycled. And this was a student in the school. And there were many examples that I was given. So I think it's really important as educators for us to acknowledge that we have these incredible young people in our midst. But every young person has the capacity to be a change maker if they want to. And as educators, we can absolutely support that process. So the question is, how do we support that process? So I think about it in these 3 steps. We break it down into 3 basic steps. The first one is that they need to develop the skills and the dispositions to be change makers. The second one is they have to apply them to a cause that they believe in. They have to be passionate about it. If we ask them to take action on something that they don't really care about, they're not going to be motivated to take action. They're not going to go that extra mile. They're not going to do that extra piece of research that might be that final piece in the puzzle to make that invention work. Authentic contexts are so important here. And finally, they need to reach their audience and build their movement. And we're going to look at each of these 3 stages just very briefly. So the first one is developing skills and dispositions. And as I've already said before, education is changing. The world is changing so quickly. We already know, and we've heard many, many times, that the education system needs to change. We need to build social and emotional skills. We need to support digital technology skills in our students. And we need to acknowledge as educators that we are there to support, to facilitate that skill development. And it doesn't matter if you are a kindergarten teacher or a high school science teacher or an arts teacher or a primary school teacher who teaches everything. If you're an English teacher, because you can develop these skills, you can develop these digital technology skills through any subject, through any approach, through any pedagogical approach. If you are purposeful and you aim very clearly to support students to develop skills in these areas. And here is just one of many reports or many pieces of research that show, this is just the difference in 14 years between 2016 and 2030, the huge increase, a percentage increase in working hours that people in Europe and the United States use these different skills. So physical and manual skills, bye-bye, and hello, social and emotional skills and digital technology skills. And these are the skills that we know are on the increase, that will needed to be used on the increase. And we need to make sure that we equip our students with these skills. The 4 C's, sometimes they're also called the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And of course, when we're thinking about communication, we have to be thinking about intercultural communication, because we live in this globalized world where we're working across different national and international boundaries. We're working with audiences globally. We also talk about character qualities. So to be a learner in this sort of increasingly globalized world, we need to have curiosity, initiative, persistence, grit, etc. And there's a great book called The Adaptation Advantage, and it says the only 3 things that we need to do moving into this sort of unknown future of living and working is to be able to learn, to be able to unlearn, and to be able to relearn. So to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So those are our soft skills. We need those. And of course, they need to apply them to a cause that they have. It has to be authentic. It has to speak to the heart. They have to care about it. When that young man that started Gotta Love Soul, Gotta Have Soul, when he walked by those 2 homeless children that were brother and sister, there was something about them that spoke to him, that made him stop. Perhaps he'd walked by other homeless people before, but there was something about those 2 that made him stop. He made a human connection, and that's what resulted in him deciding to take action. So those human to human connections. And you might have heard this term glocal. So global action through a local lens. So looking at our immediate environment, we live in very globalized local environments. If we start to break it down, we don't have to be getting on a plane or, trying to connect with a school on the other side of the world. That's great if we can, but there's lots we can do right here on our own doorsteps. Global. Interestingly, the term global actually came from, I learned this recently, came from the Japanese word dochakaka, which means global localization. So that's a great way to think about the term. And of course, reaching the audience and building a movement. And goodness me, look at your cell phone, look at a child's smartphone, a teenager's smartphone, and look at all the different ways that they can be connecting with other people in other parts of the world to get information, but to amplify their message, to push their message out. Think back to that map we saw a few slides back, that map of Fridays for Futures. Those movements are global only because Greta Thunberg could get her message to a global audience beyond her local town, village, country. And that was done. There were students in rural and regional parts of Australia and other parts of the world that connected to this movement through the smartphone in their pocket. So reaching their audience, building a movement, building a community of people that care about this issue, and working together and collaborating, global collaboration. So coming back to Activists Unite, when we're looking at the 4 domains of global citizenship or global competence, we learn about the world, we recognize perspectives, we are reflective and we recognize perspectives, and we communicate our ideas interculturally through speaking another language or just through an understanding of other countries and cultures and showing a cultural awareness. What is often missed is this piece, the taking action. Schools often do a wonderful job of supporting students to learn about the world, sometimes recognizing perspectives and increasingly communicating their ideas, particularly beyond schools. But sometimes this piece gets missed out, taking action. So we can all be working together to support our students to take meaningful action on issues that speak to them, to speak to their heart, to amplify their message globally, to connect with other people on the other part of the planet, and have intercultural experiences in a meaningful and authentic context. So we're coming to the end. What can I do as an educator? I would really encourage you all to join a global movement of educators wanting to affect change. Find your tribe. Find your PLN, your professional learning network. And just like we do with the students, we say with the students, use digital technologies to do that. I'm part of several Twitter networks, amazing educators out there doing amazing work. So you can connect to other educators doing that work on Twitter. Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Going Global that I share lots of stories and articles and pieces of research. So I can add anyone to that if you contact me. On Instagram, you can connect to different education organizations, follow, like, subscribe. Obviously, Educate's on there as well. You can join organizations or use social media platforms such as Clubhouse or, Facebook, all of these different social medias. And please continue to read books, to do professional development courses. And I would really just would like to highlight that there is an introduction to global citizenship. There is internationalizing your school PD on the MEG website. So please feel free to check those out and refer them to other people. But there is a lot you can do without getting off the couch and just opening up your smartphone. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I'm Lottie Dowling, and I've been talking about global citizenship through the lens of activism for students. And I'm going to hand over to Andrew and see if we've had any questions, comments, reflections around the topic from today.
Thank you, Lottie. Amazing presentation there. I think there's so many golden nuggets to be plucked out from that session. I'm sure our viewers are very happy with it. And just to share with you, the live session will be available as VOD after this. So if anyone has missed it, they're on the road, on the go, we can rewatch this session again anytime. Now, very quickly, Lottie, we do have quite a number of questions, and as I do myself as well. So I'm just going to run them through with you very quickly.
Great. I think this was in,
yeah, I think this was in response to your question earlier. So someone replied to say that global citizenship is someone who is aware of global issues and practices? Question mark?
Yes. Yes, great. So I asked at the beginning, what does global citizenship mean to you? So that's so great that that came in, and love the idea that they've jumped on the global issues. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, next one. We have a Hasmida Said. She asked, will you be able to conduct a session on global citizenship to educators in Malaysia?
Sure, you can contact. This is my passion area. I love doing this work. So I'm very happy to share this work with other people. And please, contact me via my socials or via Andrew. And I would love to come back as well. That would be great.
Fantastic. We will have all your contact details available to our viewers. We will make sure that we will leave that on so that they can contact you as well directly. We have a next person here, Billy, who asked, why are there so many global citizenship models when it's meant to unite us all as one? So I think he was referring to the UN one and a couple more models that you were sharing earlier.
Yes, and that is a great question. It is because essentially it comes from different pieces of research at different times. So the idea of global citizenship is constantly evolving. And so different organizations are funded at different times to look at this. And so they are looking at different pieces of research. But as always, it is evolving. So things are constantly sort of being revised, updated. People are looking at existing models. Things are changing. And as we know in education, as we know as educators, I've been an educator for 20-something years. The way that we think changes as well. Many of the things that I thought were appropriate as an early years teacher 20 plus years ago, I certainly wouldn't be thinking or doing now. So that's a great question. Thanks, Billy.
We have two comments here. One from Ehsan that said that we should have a young Malaysian global change maker. Well, I think we do have a lot of them, doing a lot of great work. It's just that the culture in Malaysia here sometimes is they don't get enough of a mention or limelight. Personally, I would like to think that these activists and whatnot should be celebrated like our sportsmen.
Yes.
You know, when they win a gold medal or a championship and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, you are championing Mother Earth. So, yeah.
And
second one,
that's a great. I mean, I think that's a great point too, Andrew, because when we only a few people ever make the news. There are many people who have done things for climate change pre Greta Thunberg, and so there are millions of young change makers around the world who will never get the recognition that some of those people that I showed on the slide will. So it's great to acknowledge that they're there and they're doing that work. And as educators in schools, that's our job, to acknowledge their work, to celebrate them and appreciate them.
Yeah, that's true. We have Watika as well, who then chimed in to say that we do have Ain Husniza, who is currently exposing rape culture in Malaysia dynamic. So that's the hot news currently in Malaysia. She is fighting obviously for gender equality, human rights and whatnot. Yeah. Zhenyi has a question here. It goes. Is global citizenship modules available as part of curriculum in Australia?
Yeah, great question. No, and I think this is also why sometimes, so global citizenship is not a topic. It's often done through other topics. So when we teach geography or history or literature, we can look at it through a different lens. So it is something that it's not like there is, the topic global citizenship, but it is certainly something that we could be looking through. We can look at maths through global lens. We can be look through problem solving, and sometimes with this work, because it's not, you have a science teacher, you have a PE teacher, you have a math teacher, you don't have a global citizen teacher. So sometimes in schools this work gets missed because there's not that one person explicitly doing it. It's kind of everybody's job, but it's no one's specific job title.
Eugene here asks, how can one be a change maker? What would the main characteristic be?
What a great question. Being a change maker, I think first of all, find something you're passionate about. Find a topic or a cause that you're passionate about. And I mean, it doesn't have to be something that's, on your doorstep, because you can use the internet to connect with something with people globally. But it does need to be something that you are willing to take action on. And it does need to be something that you really care about. And then I think the next step is really to find your tribe, and maybe you are the person that starts that. Maybe you start a club at your school around recycling, or environmental actions, or around gender equality. But maybe you find somebody else doing that work and you join their movement. That's your contribution.
So piggybacking on that question, another question from Watika here would be, what's the main hindrance, in your opinion, external factors, that limit someone from becoming a global citizen?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I think sometimes it's to do with context. So with students, they might have the skills, they might have the passion, but they might just lack the confidence, or just need that guidance and support. They need that encouragement from their parents or from their from their educators to take that next step. I think sometimes too, like I was saying, because global citizenship is not really a subject itself, we don't go and learn about global citizenship, but we might sort of think about things through a global lens. And justice-orientated citizenship, when you're talking about civics and citizenship, that is a subject that's taught in many schools in Australia and around the world. Justice-orientated citizenship is something that's sometimes looked at. So I think learning about situations around the world, learning about issues to do with global citizenship is probably something that's, like I was showing with the model, is quite easily done. But when it comes to taking action, often people want to take action, but they're not sure how. They're not sure the most effective way. So that's why going and finding those global communities, finding those local communities, developing confidence with others, developing skills with others, because, we can't all be, one of the amazing things about Greta was that she was just kind of so strong in her beliefs that she sat by herself. Before many people joined her, she was alone on the steps outside of her local council area, in a very lonely kind of situation. But that is very rare, very kind of uncommon. We're humans. We like to socialize with others. We crave connection. So when we're thinking about taking action, that's a natural part of it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have time for one last question, and
Yes.
this will be from me.
Okay.
Collaborate. We are in a pandemic. Online learning connectivity has opened up the world to everyone, right? It's a borderless world today. Has there been any school collaboration in the sense of like an online class exchange of sorts?
Yes.
So that the Malaysian students can experience what the Australian students are experiencing, for example. It's almost like a day in a school in Melbourne or something like that. Has there been anything that has been planned out that way, or are there opportunities for schools in Malaysia to be involved in such initiatives?
Yes, great question. So there are a number of existing organizations that offer either free or paid global collaboration projects, and I'd happily pop those on my Twitter feed. iEarn is one, IEARN is one. There's Flat Connections, which is a paid program run out of Australia. There's also a range of different ones that are around. The British Council offers a program. So there's a number of organizations that do actually already offer, a teacher can sign up as a class. The idea of a student individually signing up to do something is not common that I know of, and if anyone knows of one, please let me know. I'd love to know about it. But the ones that exist mainly for safety reasons, because the online environment, we need to ensure our students are safe and protected, is done through class-to-class sort of sign-ups through educators. So there are a number of organizations that do that work and allow students to collaborate with students in different parts of the world. I think the other thing that's really great to look at as educators is the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the website, The World's Largest Lesson, because there are lesson plans based around all this type of work as well.
Plenty of pointers and tips, as well as links that you will probably need to share with us, Lottie, and we will then reshare it with our audience for
Wonderful.
sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Parting thoughts. What's coming up next for Educate? What's coming up next for Meg? What's coming up next for Lottie?
Goodness me, in this kind of ever-changing world, who knows? We're coming out of a global pandemic, and that's really exciting. At Meg, I'm doing a lot more work with schools around whole school change, internationalizing schools, whole school change in global citizenship. And this is just the work that I love doing, because I just finished up with a school last week over in the States, in California, and just to see them absolutely fired up to do this work is just such a joy. And around obviously continuing language and culture programs at Meg, but also with Educate, we have couple of more conferences coming up. There's one on this weekend, Lingua Cultura, a STEM and a STEAM, if you're a STEM or a STEAM educator. And for me, I just look forward to continuing to learn and grow.
So much passion there from your voice and from your sharing, Lottie. It's very infectious, and I hope the viewers today will get some of that and you know, go ahead and become global citizens themselves, and hopefully we get to see you again, and you know, you're more than welcome to come back and share with us, Lottie. You know, we love to have you. But you know, I know you're pressing for time. I'm not going to take up much of your time, but again, on behalf of the organizers, on behalf of everyone that's listening, I'd like to say a big thank you to Lottie for spending time with us today and sharing so much with us. And Lottie, I hope you do take care and stay safe out there.
Thank you so much. Take
All right,
care,
I'll see you then.
everyone. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.